Hello, hello, hello. It's Stephanie here again, and it's HMO Heroes live at 5. And we've got our ninth HMO hero joining us tonight. And I think you're really going to love this show. Our guest tonight is a little bit different to other guests that we've had on the show, because whereas other guests have talked about how to invest in property without your own money up front, and that's the same in this case, but with this guest, you own all the equity and you don't require investors, and all the upfront capital you need is £1. Now, I have heard about this strategy before, and maybe you have as well, but we're going to hear some real life examples tonight, and so I think you'll really love that part of the show. And the other thing that we'll be talking about is how to invest in pubs and not necessarily convert to resi. So again, our guest this evening has invested in 2 pubs, and they're multi-use properties. And as I said in the flyer, just one of those pubs is netting her over £25,000 a year, when you think that is an average salary. And why I love our guest story is she's such an absolutely lovable, likable person. But underneath that, she's showed such persistence in going forward through a journey that has at times been difficult. And I know that when she first went into property 8 years ago, she was hoping, but not really believing, that property would transform her life. And as she describes herself as a girl from the valleys who didn't really believe that she was meant to have, well, I think about fame, but certainly fortune. I think it's a fantastic story, and I think you're going to love it just as much as I have, as I do. And as well as building up this property portfolio, she's also a mum of 2 as well. And as I say, she owns 2 pubs now. She's got a portfolio of HMOs. Bought the 2 properties for £1, and I haven't mentioned yet the killer leads generation system, because previous to going and working property, she was in marketing, and she's going to share all of that with you tonight. So welcome to the show, HMO hero Emma Jones.
Hello.
I pressed the wrong
button.
Hi Emma.
Hi.
So you in the sunshine?
Yes, yeah. Is it warm with you?
Yeah, very, very, very warm. Very warm.
Well, you're not too far away from me, aren't you? You're in Newport and I'm in Bridgend, so we're both South Wales based. So
absolutely, absolutely. So it's absolutely a pleasure to have you on the show tonight, and I know that people are going to get real value out of what you share, because I think it's not too often that we hear people who are actually doing these things that we hear about at the trainer level, where it all sounds a little bit far-fetched. So to hear about it in an actual practical real examples is going to be fantastic. And I really enjoyed it when you went through it with me, so I can't wait for you to go through that tonight. Now, I just want to let everybody know, if you're watching tonight, do give us a thumbs up so that we know that we're live and we're on the group. And also, if you have any questions about lease options or going into property without a lot of capital up front, please do ask those questions in the comments, and we will answer them tonight. And if you're watching after the live, then ask your questions in the comments, and then Emma can answer them for you. Okay, so let's kick this off. Emma, so tell us about yourself and how you got started in property.
Okay, yeah. My name's Emma. I'm Emma Jones. So there's not many of us in Wales. I'm originally from the Bridgend Valley. So I'm situated 20 miles from Cardiff, 20 miles from Swansea. I'm a marketing graduate. So I studied business and marketing in university, graduated, started working for local employers. I've worked for third sector charities, worked for local government in various corporate marketing roles. But I've always had this little niggle, always loved property. Bought and sold my first property when I was 18. Then myself and my fiance at the time bought a property when we were both 22, which was the old surgery in the village where I grew up, in a village called Pontycymer, and we set about renovating that. So that was my first flip, I suppose. We renovated that from a bungalow surgery into a 3-bedroom dormer bungalow house. And then we ended up profiting from that when we sold to then buy the property that we live in now. So that was my first taste of growing a property's value through adding value to it through a refurbishment. So then we flipped one property, and then that was it. Then we didn't do anything more property wise. My husband is very risk averse. He's my husband now, not my fiance. Risk averse, I would say, whereas I'm open to different ideas and trying different things. So we didn't do anything property wise then. So in 2008 we'd moved villages. We moved out of the valleys into another lovely village called Tondi, and we set about creating a home here. I was on maternity leave with my son at the time, bored, looking at properties, maybe a bit dangerous to be on maternity leave with not enough time on my hands, and I spotted this property anyway. We drove past it every day. It was the village pub. It was all boarded up. It had been boarded up for 6 months, and it looked terrible, and it brought the village down. So I had this crazy idea to put all our savings, every single penny of our savings, into buying this pub, and that's what we did anyway. We got a commercial mortgage. I think they'd give us 50%, I think at the time, 50% commercial mortgage. We put all our savings into it. Our idea was initially maybe to turn it into 6 flats or do something with it. Anyway, I had in my mind that this could be my income, and we did just that. We bought it, sunk all our money into it. We had probably £5,000 or £10,000 left to redo the property, and we redecorated the bar and reopened it within 10 days of completing on it. We then opened the bar, run the business, and then applied to refinance. So what we wanted to do is raise the value of it, like I did previously, remortgage it, and bring as much money out as we could. We went back to the bank that we originally originally had our first mortgage from, and they said, we're not lending to pubs. We are not lending to that whole sector, and actually nobody's lending to that whole sector. So within 6, 8, 12 months, we had gone from purchasing the property, putting all our savings into it, growing the value of it, which we did. We grew the value of it. We had profit and loss accounts on the pub. To be told that nobody was financing pubs, nobody was giving mortgages on pubs. Pubs were a massive risk. We're in the middle of a property, because that's what happened. About 3 or 4 months after buying the pub, property market crashed. So nobody's lending to pubs. You can't lend on it. You were stuck with it. Yeah. So from having savings to having nothing, our savings deposit pot had gone. We had a lovely building. We had a business. We had an income coming in from it, but it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't the plan that we wanted. We were really, really disappointed that we couldn't refinance. So essentially, we were stuck. So that's what led us to not worrying about it. We thought, we've still got this asset. We will rent it out to tenants, which we always wanted to do. So we found some really good tenants to rent the whole building from us, and we did. I went back to work in marketing. My husband, at the time, he was racing professionally motorbikes. So he had an income coming in. I had an income coming in. We were happy with the modest income we had coming in from the pub, with single set of tenants renting the whole premises. Mm-hmm. So at the time, our mortgage was, say, around 8,000 a year, and we signed a 3-year lease with tenants to pay £15,000 a year for the whole building. So at the time, we were happy with that. We were making, a profit on it, and we both had incomes coming in, and that was that. We were happy, but my property journey came to an end because we were stuck with not being able to refinance. I mean, looking back now, and obviously, people who are watching this know that actually we probably could have refinanced. We probably could have gone to a few different lenders. We could have gone to somebody like Aldermore, but at the time, you go to an expert and you take their advice. And our expert at the time was our Lloyd's TSB business manager, so we took their advice, and their advice was nobody was lending to pubs. So, and that's where my property journey kind of ended then. So that was my first pub. So when I went back to work, we had a modest income coming in from the pub, and both our incomes coming in. So when then I was on maternity leave then with my daughter, which was a few years later, again, dangerous, looking for things to do, looking for opportunities. And I came across some, property educators. And I know there's lots and lots of people offering, property courses now, and some better than others, So what I decided to do was go back to basics and just educate myself in as many property strategies and ways of buying property that I could. And that's what I did. I spent a good few months researching, what training was available, because I still had the itch, I still had that dream of creating as much of a passive income as I could from property. And I knew it was possible. And I knew I'd made maybe a mistake or a wrong move or a bit of bad luck, but I was full of optimism that I could create this, passive income then, which could turn into my pension, which could turn into wealth, which could send both my children to university, So I was always full of optimism. And this is how I stumbled upon the strategy of lease options. So actually, to me, it suited me. I didn't have a big pot of money as a deposit. I had the time, as much time as I had at the time, with one child in school and a baby. And I had the skills to bring in interested sellers and speak to them and see what I could do to solve their problem, So
before you launch into all of this good stuff about these options, let me just say hi to the people who are on with us at the moment. So we've got Lucky, Nikki, and Paul that I can see. I think there are other people. Oh, there are 10 people, but I can't see the others just now. If you put a thumbs up, then I'll be able to give you a little shout out. So if you have any questions, either about lead generations, about lease options, or anything like that, do ask those in the comments, and Emma will answer your questions. So coming back to you now, Emma, what I love about this is you kept going. You weren't down-pressed. What words am I looking for here?
Yeah, there is a word. I can't think of it either. Yeah, or put off. Put off at all, maybe.
Put off. And it's hard when your partner and you yourself have different sort of mindsets as well. But you kept going, and you had this property. You couldn't do what you wanted to do with it, the refurbishment or as originally planned, but you kept it. And then you've gone on to your new strategy, and you did the training. And then describe what happens next.
Yeah, so I think you're right, though. I think it's mindset and persistence, and you don't always feel optimistic, do you? I mean, some weeks you just feel like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to get to where I want to be. And also, it is the kind of people you hang around with and the people you surround yourself with. People do say I'm crazy, and people do say, why do you want what you want? And then my reaction to that is, why don't you want everything? The money doesn't drive me, but my top values, which I know what my top values are. And when my biggest top value is freedom. So a driver for me has always been freedom, financial freedom, freedom of choice, freedom how to spend my time, how I want to spend my time. So anything that kind of, pulls me towards being a bit freer is something that I'm always compelled to do. And I think this is why I just knew that having income from property would bring me freedom and abundance, and abundance is one of my top values as well. And that doesn't have to be money. It's abundance of time, abundance of family, abundance of love. So those are the things that drive me really, and still drive me now. I've built up the income that I want now, and but I can still see the future. And still see me growing my income to accommodate. I've accommodated my hopes and dreams. I'm now working towards accommodating my family's hopes and dreams. I want to send my son to Oxford. He's not going to be a cheap son to keep. So I'm including my family now in my new hopes and dreams. So there's never an end if you're optimistic. There's always somewhere to go with that optimism. So that's what led me into lease options, I suppose. Persistence, knowing that it was possible, or just believing it was possible, having that faith, and knowing that I was capable. And you don't always feel capable either. You have some weeks where you think, I am absolutely useless. What am I trying to do? What am I trying to do? But then you have some weeks where you have some successes and you think, actually, I'm really good at this. I'm really good at this. So, this could make an amazing future for myself. So, but I think it's definitely persistence, isn't it?
I love to feel this with you because, we're getting it warts and all. So tell us, because I know you've got your lead generation system, which we'll come to, but tell us about your first lease option. How did you find it? What were you doing at the time, and all the ins and outs of it, really?
Yeah, so I dived feet first into what was comfortable for me, and that was lead generation, designing some marketing campaigns to bring in the right sort of sellers that I wanted to speak to. And actually, at the time, I wanted to speak to any seller, and I don't consider myself a salesperson, and I think that's what I found. That's what I consider maybe one of my weaknesses, is that I'm not outgoing person who will knock on doors and kind of hustle. I'm a marketer, and what I consider marketing to be is anything, I suppose, pre-sales. Is designing campaigns, products, services, content that get people interested in a service. And then when they come into that company, or when they come to me then as a hot lead, it usually goes to that salesperson then to close. And I suppose that's what I've always struggled with. It's the hustle and the close, I suppose. I mean, some people are amazing at that, aren't they? You see these gurus and your Rob Moores, and they're amazing at that side of things. But I've always considered myself to be the person who is behind the computer screen, designing and kind of doing the market research and looking into what motivates sellers to want to sell and things. And I think that's my ultimate strength. So that's where I started my property lead generation business off, actually. And what I didn't realize I was doing at the time is deal sourcing, and ultimately that's what I was doing. I wanted to speak to lots of different sellers to find out what their pain was, what their pain points were, why they wanted to sell, what I could do for them to help them sell, and what would be their ideal situation in selling. And ultimately what I was doing is packaging a deal for somebody. By doing that, by finding out exactly what the seller wants, I'm actually packaging a deal to allow either myself or an investor to take that deal on. I didn't really realize it at the time. Deal sourcing is quite a well-known term now, isn't it? Everyone knows what a deal sourcer does, I suppose. But at the time, I literally was doing some market research. I was going out and I wanted to talk to as many sellers as I could and find out what their pain was. So I went in feet first. I put out about 50 yellow boards. I don't know if you've seen those yellow boards before, Stephanie. They are hand painted boards with We Buy Houses. You know, I did that. I did lots of shoestring stuff. I put postcards in shops. I did lots of the stuff that doesn't cost that much, but it takes my time. It takes the effort, you know. But I was quite willing to do that at the time. So I just wanted to speak to as many sellers as I could, and that's exactly what I did. And actually what that allowed me to do is to find out exactly why sellers sell, exactly what was happening in my local area. So I found out exactly what estates, what houses, what properties are selling, what sellers are in pain,
Right.
what they wanted, you know, what they were willing to do flexibility wise in order to sell for the price they wanted to sell for. And that's ultimately
your first option. I mean, I didn't pay
yeah.
I wouldn't know. So
right. This is what I did. So my first lease option was actually a landlord. He was a professional landlord. He saw one of my postcards in a shop. Hi Nikki. He saw one of my postcards in a shop, but it was
naked.
Yeah. She looks amazing. So it was a 3-bedroom bungalow on a lovely estate about 30 miles away from me. So ultimately at the time I was looking for properties to buy. My goal was to get a portfolio of 20 properties. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be a landlord. I wanted a portfolio of 20 properties, and that was going to be my pension. So that was my only goal at the time. What I realized is I didn't want a 3-bedroom bungalow that was, converted for disability. I mean, I didn't want a bungalow that was 30 miles away from me. This wasn't going to suit me. But what I did do is I really got on with seller. He was a lovely guy. He had a portfolio of properties and some land, and so we talked about his hopes and dreams and what he was planning to do. He needed to sell this in order to eventually build a house. So that's why he wanted to sell it. He'd already bought a bit of land. He wasn't quite ready to start building yet, and he knew he could borrow some money from the bank, but he couldn't borrow the whole amount to build. So I found out what his motivation was, and what I kind of put to him after many hours of thinking, right, what can I do with this deal? What can I do with this deal? I put the idea to him of putting a tenant buyer into the property. So putting a tenant into the property who was going to rent it from him, and in 2-3 years' time would buy it. I mean, I came to the tenant buyer option because he had had it on the market for over a year. They hadn't sold. He'd had 2 offers, which were probably about £15,000 lower than what he was asking. He didn't want to sell it for anything less than what he was asking. And that was because he didn't need to sell it straight away. And he needed that amount of money to do his building project. So those are the 2 sticking points for him. So I knew if I could get what he wanted for the property, he'd be happy, but also he'd be willing to give somebody flexibility to buy it as well. So this is how I came to the tenant buyer option. I could have easily have taken that property on myself, and given him flexible terms as well, but tried to somehow get some cash flow in it for me, you know. But I mean, he wasn't willing to drop the price, drop the rental price. So anyway, tenant buyer was perfect. We marketed the property for him, and in the early days, we did things kind of again on a shoestring. We put signs outside the house. We paid somebody to put it on Zoopla, I think, at the time, and within 3 weeks, we had 2 couples that wanted to buy it.
Oh wow!
So the couple that eventually bought it were an amazing couple. They'd been hoping to buy for years and years. They had a previous bankruptcy, which was stopping them getting a mortgage. They both had amazing salaries. So they had lots of, 2 really good salaries coming into their household, but they still couldn't get a mortgage. They just didn't tick that box because their bankruptcy was 4 years old. Obviously, you need 6 years of clean credit to be able to get that mortgage. So all they needed was 2 years, So they just needed at least 2 years for the bankruptcy to fall off their credit file and for them to then get put a fresh application in for a mortgage. So that's exactly what they did. Actually, we set the deal. So they agreed with the seller that they would take it on. They would pay a down payment, and they would rent it for up to 3 years while they first of all improved the property. So they wanted to put a new bathroom in, they wanted to redecorate it, which they did in the end. It was absolutely beautiful when they finished it. So they wanted to improve the property, which you can't do in a rented property. You know, it's throwing dead money away. So for them, it was perfect. They improved the property. It was like a palace. It was beautiful. And they were able to get the credit file all sorted and get their mortgage. So with that one, that was my very first deal. And what I did is I took half of the upfront payment. So I had £5,000 for that one. The owner had £5,000, I had £5,000. And, you know, it was a win-win-win. I had my fee for matching them up. The seller had exactly what he wanted. He had exactly the right sales price for the house. And the buyers had exactly what they wanted. They had complete flexibility to buy it. It fit within their term. And they were absolutely over the moon to be able to live in the house that they were buying. So that for me just was the icing on the cake for me. I just thought I've matched these two people up in an amazing scenario that suited both. And I've made £5,000, which would have been 2 months' salary for me when I was working, you know. So for me, that was the start of something that I hoped it would be, you know. So I was absolutely over the moon with that first deal.
Fantastic. And I think people may not be aware of this whole tenant buyer strategy. So it's good that you were able to go into quite a lot of detail there. So then you were quite successful with this lead generation malarkey. So tell us about that. What systems did you have in place, and what sort of, I don't know, funnel, if you will?
Yeah. Okay. So in the early days, I put a lot of time into just getting out there, you know, getting physical signs out there, you know. I tried local papers, which worked sometimes. I think with the kind of marketing I did in the early days, the simpler you keep it, the better. And I know more and more and more people are doing this now. I mean, I'm driving around now and I'm seeing We Buy Houses, little cards, and really posh looking ones. And I think mine were literally a bit of paint on a card, you know. But actually, I think that I love the way we used to do things because, you know, it's called guerrilla marketing, and it's called that for a reason. It's supposed to be kind of handmade and a bit, because the types of sellers that we wanted in are, you know, wanted to kind of inquire, are the ones that can't sell, are the ones that are possibly behind within mortgages. You know, they are looking for solutions. And when I'm driving around now and see these We Buy Houses sign, I think, oh, another one, you know, because at the time when we were doing it, we were getting loads of attention because people weren't doing that then. And sometimes the more handmade our boards looked, meant that people rang to speak to a person. They didn't ring to speak to a company, and that's exactly what I wanted. So I wanted that kind of DIY handmade, you know. I mean, we've developed our lead generation now, so that it includes, you know, online, lots of online stuff. Still, most of it on a shoestring budget, because I love doing things that way. And I get, you know, leads coming into my inbox every day. You know, leads from sellers who are in different stages of selling. Some might have been on the market for 18 months and they're absolutely desperate for a solution. Some of them might have moved to Australia 6 months ago and they've had an empty property and they just don't trust their agent anymore to sell because it's just not going. Some people have just put their homes on the market and they're just looking at their options, you know. So we get lots of different types of sellers in these days, and we kind of, you know, we sort them out, and we sort them out on what kind of seller they are and what kind of, you know, flexibility they're willing to give, whether it suits an investor, you know. So we're spoiled these days with the amount of leads that we've got coming in, you know. But in the early days, we, you know, did things differently, I suppose. but both ways work. These days, I've got a lot less time. I think that's the difference. I've got a lot less time. I'm willing to put a little bit of a budget in every month. I know exactly what I'm looking for these days as well. In the early days, I was willing to speak to any seller in any situation, you know. These days, I know exactly what I'm looking for. So I've segmented my audience and I targeted the ones that I want and I stick with that. And that's what I love kind of helping other people to do as well. If they know what kind of properties they want, what kind of deals they want, then I'm, you know, more than happy to segment and target their audience and show them how to get to those sellers. Because I see a lot of people's marketing being quite wasteful. They are paying £1,000 to flyer a whole village. You know, they are paying £225 to put, 500 flyers into newspapers. And I just think, there's so much more you could do with that budget, you know, by targeting.
What should they be doing?
So they need to, first of all, decide what sort of business person you want to be. You know I'm kind of going back now a lot, but for me, I wanted HMOs. This is the type of landlord I wanted to be. I wanted HMOs. I wanted an automated system. And I didn't want, I changed my goal from wanting to have 20 single lets to wanting to have maybe, 8 HMOs. You know, I'm quite happy with that as my target. So for me, I am looking for, I'm not going to fly to a village. I am looking for 4 or 5 bedroom houses that are empty, that possibly even go drilling into a little bit further. I want 4 or 5 bedroom properties that are empty and their owners have either moved on or they've moved country or they've bought another house and they don't necessarily need to sell that house. So they're willing to give me a bit of flexibility with it. And this is how I find exactly the right lease options that I'm looking for. And I no longer kind of, blanket market, hoping to get those leads in. Now I literally just go for those properties, just go for those leads, because I know exactly what I'm looking for and I know what I can offer them.
With the land registry, is it that you do it, Erin?
Well, I do it a few different ways. Land registry is a good one. I mean, if we find something on the usual portal, so Rightmove, Zoopla, we send a letter straight to them. But what happens is if they're not in the property, they don't get the letter. The letter goes to the property, which is empty. Sometimes the estate agent puts it on the shelf with all the other posts, so that sometimes is a little bit futile. I mean, I use Gumtree a lot. I use other platforms like Open Rent. So say that same couple now has moved away from that big 4 or 5 bedroom property. They think, right, let's try and rent it out. They might put it on Open Rent if they want to try and do it themselves, or they might try and market it through the estate agent as a let and a sale, just because from the type of the way they market in the property that they are desperate to sell, but they're open to rent as well. So that's a really easy one. If it's up for let and sale, then and if it's empty as well, you know that they're quite willing to have that solution presented to them. I mean, we do it in other ways as well. We bring in incoming leads. So we put adverts in various places online to say that we're a company from Bridgend. We're a management company from Bridgend. We're looking for large executive style properties in the Bridgend area. So we tell them exactly what we're looking for. Instead of going to, we buy houses, we'll buy any property, we'll pay cash for property. We say we're a management company from Bridgend. We're looking for 4 to 5 bedroom executive properties. So we tell them exactly what we want, and then it kind of weeds out then some other people. I mean, people might come in and say, oh, I got a 3 bedroom property, but you could have a 4th bedroom downstairs. What do you think? And that's great too. But I find, especially these days, I am targeting the exact seller that I want, and I think it works better.
Fantastic advice. Now, just want to say a quick hellos, because there have been a few hellos, comments and questions. So, hi to Gregor. Oh, I can't make my thing go. Oh, Wendy. Oh, it won't go up. It was going up. Susie Q, hello. Long time no see. Alison, Arshad, Daniel, Daniel North.
Hi, Dan.
And we've got a couple of questions. Now we'll come back to the questions, but first of all, could you please go into your first lease option that you bought with £1?
Yeah. Okay. So my favourite one was the lease option that I bought myself, which actually came in from the exact advert that I just talked about. So that was management company in Bridgend looking for executive style 4 to 5 bedroom properties. I had a lovely guy approach me. He lived in London. He was a doctor. His wife was a teacher, both professionals. They had initially bought this house in Bridgend during the height of the market, so 2007. They had changed jobs, moved back up to London. This property was empty, so they decided to rent it out. And had done for the last 4 years through a local agent. So during that 4 years, they'd had a few different sets of tenants. The property maintenance maybe wasn't being done, and the house, the state of the house, the condition of the house kind of dropped. So they were looking to either sell but they wanted a set price for it. So I think the amount they wanted is 195. They weren't willing to drop that, and I think it's because they had quite a high mortgage on it. So he was very fixed that he wanted 195 for it, and actually because of the condition of the property, it wasn't quite worth the 195 that he needed. So he was in a sticky situation where it would either sit on the market empty, hoping to sell for maybe a bit too much, or he had to find another solution, or he could rent it out again to tenants, but risk having the tenants maybe trash the place or not look after it as the previous tenants had done. So that's where he was. He just wanted a solution, and he said himself, he had a good job, his wife had a good job. He said, it's not about the money, I just want peace of mind. So that was his motivation. He wanted peace of mind. So he liked the fact that we were advertising ourselves as a management company. He liked the fact that when we were chatting, I said, look, I'm looking for something I can bring into my own portfolio to treat as my own, which I do, we got on, and he appreciated what we were trying to do, and I appreciated what he was trying to do. So I made him an offer. I made him an offer that I would lease it. So we would lease it as a company for 7 years. So he would give us up to 7 years to purchase it. But in return, we would give him a good monthly fee, and we would give him the 195 that he wanted. But he just needed to give us a bit of flexibility. And he agreed, and that's what he wanted. And it was exactly what he wanted, because we agreed to look after it as our own. We agreed to do the maintenance, all the day-to-day maintenance. He agreed to keep his insurance in place for the boiler. He keeps the boiler serviced every year for us. He's great like that. But he's got British gas cover, so that's what he did. He just kept his British gas cover in place, and they look after the boiler. So that's the deal we came up with. So that was essentially a 7-year lease option, and that was my first property that I bought for £1 as my own. So that is one of mine.
So before we skip on, so you let me see if I've got this right. So purchase price that was agreed was 195.
Yeah.
And you're paying rent for a 7-year period, or does that come off the 195?
No, so that doesn't come off the 195. So that is just a rent. And lots of people ask, especially buyers, they ask, does that whole amount come off the end price? But obviously he had his own mortgage. He's got, he has got a repayment mortgage, but there's a big chunk of that repayment mortgage that's interest. So his balance isn't coming down by 700 a month, because we pay 700 a month for that. So that's a rent-only payment. It doesn't go up. It stays the same because it covers his mortgage, and he's happy with that. And the way we make money on it is we pay him 700 a month. We rent the rooms out, and our profit is the difference. But the seller gets what we've agreed every month on time.
Great. So that's a great solution for him and for you. And then you would just buy in the normal way at the end of the periods, or whenever you want to during the 7 years.
Yeah, so we can either buy it or we can sell it. So we've got, in the lease option, we've got the option to buy or the option to sell on to a third party. So if I wanted to keep it in my portfolio, which I think I will, it's a great HMO. It cash flows really well, and I think when we finance it or refinance it or buy it, we will, be making a bit more profit, because we're hoping to put some cash into it, get maybe a 70% commercial mortgage on it, but that's a little bit further down the line. I've got a little bit more longer to think about that. Yeah. If we wanted to sell it on, what I would do is do a little makeover on it, dress it, possibly sell it for maybe 225, maybe 235, depending on how long we waited to sell it. And then when we sold it, the seller would still get his 195 and we'd get the profit on top. I mean, we have made lots of improvements to that property. We installed a shower room. We did all the bathroom out upstairs. We've redecorated all the way through. We're thinking of maybe making a few changes in the kitchen now to improve the kitchen. So any added value has come from the time, the flexibility is given us, and actually the value that we've added to the property by making improvements. So,
yeah. Okay, great. Now, we did have a lease option question, and I think it's one you've touched on already, but it's Lucky has asked, how do you find this type of owner, like the one you bought yours from?
Yeah, the thing is, I might speak to 20 owners, before I speak to an owner who is in the right kind of what I'm looking for and what they're looking for matches up, So I do speak to a lot of owners, and I do help a lot of owners, maybe without taking their properties on, or I say to them, I think the answer here is for you to change agents. It sounds like your agent isn't working hard enough for you. I don't try and take them all on as my own kind of leads in business. The ones that feel right, the ones I know I can really help, those are the ones that I take on. So I think in a way it is a numbers game, even though I target the deals and the sellers that I want. I still speak to lots and lots of sellers each week, and kind of and look for the ones I can really help, and look for the ones that have got properties that I'd love to keep or sell on, so.
And what do you do with the ones that you can't? You don't, maybe they're not in your area or what have you. What do you do with those?
I know, because I've got a big tick list of properties that I keep. I mean, I brought it now, so they need to be within 10 minutes of my house. Anything outside of 10 minutes from my house is, I've got 2 children, I've got a family, so my kind of wish list has got a bit stricter as I've gone along. But yeah, so anything outside of my area or anything that doesn't tick my list then. So I could do a few different things. I've got connections with agents outside of the area. So if I think they just need to swap agents, I might suggest an agent to them, and that's it. They always go on my follow-up list though, and say 2 months down the line I'll ring them and see how things are going, or my girl Teresa will ring them and see how things are going. The other thing is there's lots of different investors doing exactly what I do in different areas. I mean, anything in Newport I would put your way, so there's other investors that you can pass on to, and then maybe split a fee, or if they want to keep it for themselves, they could give me a little finder's fee, and I would do the same for them. So there's lots of different investors that I work with outside of the area, and then there's other investors then who work in my area but maybe are willing to take on single lets, and I'm not really interested in single lets, so again we would do it so that I would maybe pass on either the hot lead, or I would pass on the qualified seller, or I would actually pass on the deal that I've already done with the seller, and we would just work out some sort of finder's fee, or we'd swap leads, or there's always something that we could do, but there's always something that I can do for those sellers, even if it's just giving them a good bit of advice, like change your agent, or just have a look at advert on Rightmove and they haven't done the photos very nice, or it's not selling because they've photographed the kitchen awkwardly or something. I think as long as I leave the seller with a little bit more information than they had before they came on the phone to me, I'm happy. So I think I think it's not focusing on the fee and the result. It's just focusing on helping the seller, So that's what I try and do.
Fantastic. Thanks, Anne. So we have other questions from Kylie Rose. Hi, Miles. Do they have an opportunity of changing their minds in the 7 years? It seems like a long time to commit, not to sell.
Yeah, it is a long time, 7 years, and we did have a really good chat about that. Because obviously he's got a good job. There's changes come in now to with the kind of Section 24 and the tax implications, and but I mean, again, he said, look, it's not about the money, it's about the peace of mind, and as long as he knows his property is being looked after, and he's getting his fee every month and he's getting what he needs out of it, there shouldn't be anything that would change, whether it was 1 year or 6 years or 7 years. I mean, things do change, I totally appreciate that, but we could deal with that when we came to it. I mean, if something were to go wrong and he needed to sell, then he would obviously give me a ring, and we could discuss maybe buying it a bit earlier, or something like that. But I've never come across a situation where the seller has pulled out then. I mean, there's really rugged black and white contracts that are in place to stop that as well. So from a legal standpoint. But yeah, I mean, the way I see it, that yeah, things can change, but you've just got to deal with them when they come along. But we've got a really robust agreement, and it's in contracts, and it's been done by solicitors. So the agreement and the decision for him to enter into a 7-year contract with ourselves was discussed in depth at the start, so he didn't take it on lightly then.
Great, thanks. And Kylie's also said you've got a lovely attitude. So that's
lovely. Thank you.
Now, Lucky has said, was it after your multiple mistakes that you realised that you're more comfortable with lease options? Well, I'm going to come on to the pub, because Lucky is not only doing lease options. Lease options is just one of the things that Emma's doing. And we do want to come on to what happened with that pub, because it actually didn't turn out to be such a mistake. Often things are hard at the beginning, then a few years down the line you start to reap the rewards. So let's move on to give the story, Emma, of what happened with that first pub that you bought.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So when I was looking into different strategies, and I came across the HMO strategy, as well as discovering the lease option strategy, I realised that what I needed to do with the pub is, and what had been staring me in the face all the time, is multi-let it, and that's exactly what I did. We probably spent about between 6 and 12 months splitting the accommodation upstairs, which we could do at the time because we could do it through permitted development. Luckily, upstairs there was a huge apartment with 2 kitchens in there anyway, so it was really easy to then eventually split up. Downstairs we did exactly the same. So essentially what happened is, instead of having one tenant leasing the whole property from us, we eventually ended up having 3 residential tenants upstairs, all on separate ASTs. Downstairs, we leased the restaurant to a chef, and then we leased the bar to a bar manager. So essentially, we had 5 tenants. So it took the rents from 15,000 a year to 36,000 a year. Wow. So, and it's another thing. I kick myself now. I could have done this 9-10 years ago, but obviously, what's the only difference is the education, the knowledge that I know now. I knew that I could probably have refinanced it, and I should have blinking multi-let it from day one, But obviously, another hard lesson learned. And once we had multi-let it, the profits just skyrocketed. And actually, we went back to the bank with the new setup, with all our different contracts, with the 2 leases from downstairs and 3 ASTs upstairs, and they approved us a refinance straight away. And obviously, the other thing that helped us was time, because the market was recovering. Everything was a bit, felt a bit nicer. Banks like Lloyds and NatWest were lending to small businesses, and they had kind of, they had the remit and they had targets to do so. They had to lend, a certain amount of money to small businesses. So it all worked out in the end. And our application was accepted to refinance. They came in and valued the property, and we bought it for 110, and they came back in and valued it for 290. So actually, that little bit of time and changing the way we rented it just made a massive difference. In the end, we were able to refinance. We were able to pull all our money out and a little bit more. and happy days. You know, we were able then to go and do other things with it.
Yeah, because when you think about it, although at the beginning it wasn't quite what you thought it would be, it's still, you bought a property for £110,000, not a lot, and you've now refinanced it for considerably more than you bought it for, although admittedly, obviously, you have invested in that property. Mm-hmm. But that investment plus the refurbishment, and you're now in net profit after all the costs of running those businesses, you're making 25 grand a year. And I was saying earlier, that's the average, I believe it's still the average UK salary is 25 grand a year from that one property that you bought for 10k. So it was, it's not quite the mistake we were making.
I know, do you know, it was worth it in the end, but I always remember when times were, shit, when I thought, I'm going to have to go back to work. This doesn't work, I always remember my mum saying to me, sell the pub and you'll have 50 grand in the bank. Sell the pub now and you'll have 50 grand in the bank. And I was thinking at the time, because you do listen to your mum, I was thinking, I could sell it for maybe 160, I'd have 50 grand in the bank. But then something kind of made me think, no, that's not what I was in this for. I was in this for the long haul. This is my pension. I know something's gonna go right with this. This is a bloody big, massive building. Something's gotta kind of come from it in the end, And it did, and I always think I'm so glad that I didn't sell it and have 50 grand in the bank, because the day we had to revalued for 290 and we brought that amount out as profit anyway, and then continued having our rental profits, I think that's when I realised I did the right thing just by hanging on, I mean, people say, don't they, if you live your life for a few years in a way other people won't, you can live the rest of your life in a way that other people can't. And I know that's a little bit, I don't know, I feel uncomfortable saying that, but I think it's right. I think sometimes you just got to hang in and if the money's not there, the money's not there, you can survive. Something's going to come of it in the future. I mean, I was watching a program the other day and it was about the crash in America, and people were had all these negative equity properties. I think it was in California, and they were all trying to sell and they were all trying to do short sales. And I was thinking, obviously, some of them had to do that. They didn't have a choice. But I was thinking, if they held in, that same property now today is worth so much more. Yeah. And I wonder what the motivation for people is to have to, sell. As soon as the market goes down, they're like, oh, I've got to sell. And obviously some people, have to, I'm not saying that, but I think it is time, isn't it? Sometimes these market crashes and valuations are a little bit make-believe, aren't they? They're just what the market is saying at the time is the value. But anyway, I'm glad I kind of stayed with it. And it did work out in the end. And I still believe the only difference was education. The only difference was me knowing new strategies and new ways of doing things anyway. And I still believe that's the only way that I held in there then, and it worked eventually.
What I love about this is you're doing pubs in a slightly different way that people in the property sector don't tend to be talking about doing pubs as pubs. It tends to be more on the conversions to resi.
Yeah.
Interesting to hear about making that work, and also very profitably. And also you're in a marketplace that there tends to be less competition in terms of buying it. So when one of these properties is up for sale, there are fewer people competing to buy it. So obviously all of those things. Well, at the moment, we better keep this quiet. We have got a couple of comments. Panic, Kylie's saying that they panic when the market goes down. Mm-hmm. And that Kylie's saying, nice one that you get your whole salary from one property. So that could be an idea for you, Carl, because you were saying you don't like the HMO side of things. How much did you spend on the refurb? Although it was a little while ago. That question's from Lucky. Thanks for that.
Yeah, so and again, that was something that we did over time. So we probably put a good few thousand a year into the property while we were working, so we continued to improve the property. even when it was leased, so we got all the outside and we got all the back concreted, we did all the roof. So we eventually got 2 new roofs put on, and that was a little bit every year that we put into it. When we eventually multi-let the upstairs, it wasn't that much work we needed to do. We obviously needed to get all our permissions at the time. We had to work with the building inspectors and things. So we probably put another maybe 15 into that. So, but we knew that we were doing that in order to get those increased rents, So we did keep ploughing money into the property, through pure faith. But we were adding value to the property, even if the bank wouldn't lend us. We knew we were adding value to it then.
Yeah, and I think you said altogether you'd sort of estimated it was around 50 grand that you put into it.
I think
does that sound right?
Yeah, because that's the amount we had out at the end. So we thought, right, we've had everything we put into the property and the property purchase price. So that's what we had out at the end. So yeah, it was about that.
Okay, now what I've realised is we might have to have you on again, Emma, because we do like to keep these to an hour, and there's only about 5 left.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
So what I want to come on to is you bought a second pub now, and obviously all the experience you've had with the first pub. So tell us about that pub, because this is a really great story as well.
Yeah, so it's a pub I had my eye on for years and years. It's a pub in the neighbouring village. So it was a pub about a mile away. Exactly the same happened with that. Brains owned it. Brains Brewery owned it. There was a manager there. The manager kind of ran down the business a little bit. Actually, what he did is he leased the pub opposite and leased that on a free of tie. So he didn't have to, answer to the brewery. Took all the customers from this pub over to his new pub and left this pub with not much custom. So what Brains did, shut down the pub, put it up for sale for £175,000 plus VAT. It sat on the market for 4, 5, 6 months. We were watching it. Then together with another investor, we put a quick cash offer in. We started from 90. The first offer we gave them was 90,000, but they weren't having any of it. We made them wait a week to try and call their bluff. No, they weren't having any of it. So we kind of upped our offer then, but we ended up securing it and completing in 28 days at 120,000. So from 175,000 plus VAT, we got it 120. We got them to kind of disallow the VAT as well, because we proved that we were turning this one into mostly residential. So they allowed us to pay 120 grand, not plus VAT. So that was a really good, thing that we managed to do, obviously on advice from the experts and now solicitors. Our solicitors made it work, but we did a sale that was 120 grand, but not plus VAT. So with this property, we have got, it's a huge property, but we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to keep the bar as a small locals bar, because historically it had a really good turnover, it had really good take-ins. It would be a real shame to shut that down. We are going to turn the whole of the upstairs into residential. So we can have a 6-bedroom HMO right above the bar, and at the back we're going to try and fit 3 or 4 bed sits in the back, but we've got to go for planning on that. And we're going to do it in stages. So what we're going to do is a 6-bedroom HMO, and we're going to reopen the bar and lease that. And what we've worked out is with the 6 ASTs we've got from the HMO and the lease we've got from whoever's running the bar, that will be enough for us to get it refinanced at a valuation of, we think, maybe 300. We're spending about 80 on it to get that valuation of 300. And then we'll be able to either bring out all our costs and spend them on the bed sits, or bring out a little bit more and then just spend that borrowed money on the bed sits. So sorry, I'm trying to keep it quick because I know about the time. But that's our plan for that. So we're going to do exactly the same, but we're going to do what I should have done from day one on pub 1, So, that's ongoing now. We're 4 weeks away from completing the HMO, and then we're going to move on to the bar. But what we're doing differently this time as well is we bought the pub cash, and we put it in our application to NatWest now to refinance. So we're hoping to refinance before Christmas. So, you know, hopefully the day that all the ASTs are in place, and the day the lease is in place, and the day that it's all lovely and new and valued at, you know, that's the day our refinance goes through, because, you know, we can do it today, you know, so.
And you've got the land.
Yes, so about a week before we completed, Brains phoned us, you know, the Brains solicitor phoned our solicitor, our solicitor phoned us and said, look, Brains have got a little bit of land next to the pub, and they're going to throw it in with the sale. Is that okay? And I said, yeah, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. They said it's got its own deeds. It's got its own deeds, this bit of land, but they decided they wanted to keep it first, but now they've decided to put it in with the sale. So I was like, right, okay. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. We'll take it. When we actually completed the sale, then we were contacted by the next door neighbour to say that there'd been an ongoing dispute with the wall. The wall had actually fallen down, with a huge stone wall. Brains had promised them that they were going to rebuild the wall. Then they phoned them and said, we're not going to rebuild the wall because we've sold it. So they pretty much passed the liability on to us. Yeah. So we kind of realised then why all of a sudden this bit of land was put into the deal. But anyway, we'll take it. We've priced up the wall. It's going to be between 600 and 800 to get it fixed, which is absolutely fine. So we've pretty much bought a bit of land at the side of the pub, which we think eventually is going to have a room for at least 2 flats on it. Mm-hmm. So we've essentially bought that for maybe 800 quid to fix a wall, you know. So, I mean, I don't know if that was luck. I don't know if that's the universe, you know, but something happened there whereby we got that bit of land in the end.
And to say there what you built.
So eventually, I mean, my partner Chris, I'm talking about it already, but he's like, right, slow down now. We'll talk about that when we finished everything else. But we think there could be 2 little nice flats, you know, so like a house, 1 flat, first floor, 1 ground floor flat. Yeah. It's got shared access, you know, with one of the other commercial buildings next door, but it's all doable. So we're gonna see what permissions we could get for that, and then possibly build there, because it's on, you know, it's on its own deeds. We wouldn't have to split any deeds to do it. So yeah, it's all good.
Fantastic. Well, what we'll do is we'll come on again another time and just do a proper deep dive into the pub and the numbers. But just very quickly before we sign off, can you tell us about the you mentioned it's about 80k for the refurb, and the purchase price on that one?
So that was 120, and we're hoping to do it for 60, but we're going to see how it goes. So if we do it for 60, it'll be 180 all in. We're going to try and get it valued maybe 300. We're trying to be conservative with that. Well, I hope so. So anything north of 300, we can refinance everything out. So
fantastic. Sounds amazing. So really loving the pubs. And what we'll do when we come back on is just share some tips about what to look for on the, you know, when you're searching for pubs that are going to work for this multi-purpose sort of development.
Yeah, definitely, because I think it's such a shame to shut down these little bars, because these little local bars are profitable. I think these huge pubs that are used just for drinking, that's when, you know, you see them closing and things, you know. But I think big pubs, food pubs, great, restaurant, bar, or keep the little locals bar and just have it as, you know, that little watering hole. It can still be profitable, and even more profitable for us because we only lease it, you know, so we're only leasing, you know, a trading space. That's all we're doing. We're leasing a trading space. So yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your knowledge tonight. We didn't get as far as we wanted to with everything that Emma's got going on. And I think you'll agree that it's been fantastic having Emma, because she's so real. She says everything, warts and all, about her journey. But Kylie's asking, Phil has given a thumbs up. She likes the sound of it. Kylie's asked what your income will be, but we'll put all that into the next one, Kylie, because you might not have that number at the top exactly of your mind right now, Emma. But we'll come back on and we'll do a shorter one, which is just about that pub.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that, and I'd be happy to put the figures, our expected figures, in a comment, you know, below. So that's no problem.
That's a great idea. If you've got any more questions that we haven't got time for, please put them below in the comments and Emma will come to them. And I'm sorry if you have made a comment. Gregor Piri, thank you for giving me the word that I was looking for earlier, deterred.
Deterred.
Yeah. And thanks for everyone who's watched this well that I haven't mentioned. I have tried to mention everything. But for now, it's bye from Emma.
Bye.
Bye from me. And we'll be back next week. And I can't wait for next week as well, because we have got Mike Stenhouse from Inside Property Investing coming on the show. And I'm really, really excited for that one as well. Okay, bye guys. I'll see you next week.